Hi, my name is Jayreid. I'm a psychotherapist in San Francisco, California, and today I want to talk about the value of writing prescriptions of self-care for oneself in the recovery from narcissistic abuse. I found that this act or tactic of writing prescriptions of self-care for oneself following or in the process of recovering from narcissistic abuse can be very helpful for two reasons that I'll go into some depth in today. The first is it counters the narcissist's projection of worthlessness into the sufferer, into the victim. Self-care is inherently defiant of the notion of worthlessness. And second, in the course of narcissistic abuse, one has to occupy an unreality where one is supposedly and unrealistically deserving of the mistreatment being imposed by the narcissist. And what that can result in is a sense of disconnection from one's actual self and a sort of connection, we might say, to this sort of flimsy, very thought-based and removed sort of distorted version of oneself. And taking actions to care for oneself, I think, very much focuses and grounds one on one's real, sort of actual self in the world. Very much the self that goes purposively unacknowledged, maligned, and usually discarded by the narcissist. So it's sort of a reclaiming. It offers one an opportunity to reclaim what was impossible usually to hold on to in relationship to the narcissist. And just quickly, so it's clear what I mean by writing a prescription for self-care. These are just actions that one might, upon reflection, think, yeah, I think I would feel better, even if it's a slight amount, if I were to do that for myself each day. And so simple acts like having a bedtime ritual, keeping one's house in a state of order that is pleasing to oneself, generally speaking, making time to relax each day, promoting one's physical health via diet and or exercise. These are not necessarily like revolutionary ideas as to how to take steps to care for oneself, but they're very important in the context of recovery from narcissistic abuse because of how they work to break the legacy of narcissistic abuse, which in essence says something like, you do not deserve to be cared for. Okay, so the first reason why writing a prescription for self-care is important following narcissistic abuse, because it counters the sense of worthlessness that was initially relocated from the narcissist into the victim, and then by various ways the narcissist influences the victim to think of the narcissist's worthlessness as his or her own. And so, again, particularly coming out of childhood, that can create this sense for the surviving child and later survivor that relocated worthlessness from the narcissistic parent is one's own. And the process of recovery often involves understanding that it was never the survivors to begin with, but also taking action in the here and now that defies the premise that the survivor is worthless. And that's where such acts of self-care really come in. And I want to emphasize that a lot of times these acts are not easy to do day in and day out for the survivor. And you can imagine, say, how some of the beliefs we've been talking about in this series could interfere with the execution of fulfilling these prescriptions, as it were. So, for instance, this is a completely made-up example, but I'm going to just speak as if this person actually exists. But so I had a client named, we'll call him Terrence, and Terrence, when he reflected on kind of what was important to him, one thing was his health and his maintaining a certain level of physical fitness. Terrence also was a survivor of narcissistic abuse as a scapegoat in his family of origin. His mother was extremely narcissistic and vicious towards him. And one thing coming out of that he carried in terms of beliefs was the one of being physically disgusting. So he would experience and perceive himself to be grossly overweight and objectionable to others in terms of his physical appearance. And as we would work together at the same time, that there was something very kind of original and true about his desire to attend to and promote his own physical fitness. So I'm kind of like condensing a lot into this, again, anonymous client. But one thing we sort of came upon was like the prescription of running or jogging 15 minutes per day, and how it would be to just kind of make that part of his day-to-day ritual. And it was hard for Terrence, and I think like most survivors of narcissistic abuse, they possess a tremendous amount of grit and persistence, toughness and resilience, and he leveraged those attributes to keep on keeping on in this prescription. And he would feel so oppressed by the belief of being physically disgusting that it could feel at times like taking the jog that day was only sort of adding fuel to the fire of this belief, that it's sort of underscoring that he is in fact physically disgusting, and he has to take this jog to sort of offset how disgusting he is. And what we grew to kind of understand together was that sort of obfuscated or distracted him from the real benefits he was getting to experience for him and only him by taking these jogs each day. And that's an important part in this process, is not just working to sort of defy the sort of the belief, say in this case, if I'm physically disgusting, but to, in essence, turn away from that whole rigmarole of the kind of all the distortions in the narcissistic abusive system, and turning towards oneself and sort of posing the question and answering it, and then taking action of what do I want, what's important to me, and what actions can I take in the service of that. Way easier for me to say that than, at least initially, for the survivor often to do day in and day out. But it is well worth it. And I would encourage folks to be gentle with themselves, if there's a day, a week, a month where one's not able to do this. This is a process, and that's probably a theme that keeps coming up. But these tactics, I think, can incrementally facilitate the process, and fits and starts. The other reason why writing a prescription for self-care is important in the recovery from narcissistic abuse is that it counters the kind of false reality that the victim of narcissistic abuse must sort of inhabit while in contact with the narcissist. And in this case, what I mean by the false reality is kind of going back to some of the other videos I've talked about, and where the narcissist relocates their sense of worthlessness into the victim, then acts in ways to induce the victim to think of that worthlessness as his or her own. The alternative for the victim, particularly, again, the child, if they do not kind of accommodate and go along with the narcissist's mandate that the child in this case is the worthless one, they experience this intense sort of estrangement from themselves, from the parent, because they are not known in that case. The narcissistic parent is saying, I only know you as worthless. And if you do not present and believe yourself as worthless, then you are no one to me and I am no one to you. And that's a sort of cataclysmic level of abandonment for the child. Abandonment / a sort of, you can even think of it as a psychic annihilation. It has to be avoided at all costs in childhood. Thankfully, after getting out from under the reign of a narcissist, whether a partner or parent, it becomes safer to occupy the space outside of being the worthless one in relation to the narcissist. It becomes gradually safer. And one thing that writing a prescription for self-care does is, I think, take a step in that direction. Take a step out of being the worthless one who doesn't deserve any care to the narcissist, and out to sort of that great beyond, which is in fact great for the survivor, because what was over here, yes, there was some familiarity, but the level of discomfort was constant, intense, and entirely undeserved for the survivor, where they were sort of known by the narcissist. So doing an action of self-care in a sort of regular way sort of is saying, I'm not who the narcissist said I was, and there's actually a way of being or an identity I'm choosing over how the narcissist claimed he or she knew me. There's this movie cartoon, Dumbo, and it was about a big baby elephant. And at one point, Dumbo is at this really there's a ladder, and he's on this really small platform, and he's in a circus. And I may not be remembering this exactly right, but anyway, bear with me. So Dumbo's on this platform super high up that, I don't know, I think they climbed up this ladder. And so he's this big elephant, all four, hooves on this small little platform, and they want him to jump off the circus master, not very kindly. And Dumbo's terrified. I think that is a good sort of analogy to what it can feel like for the child. It's almost like the child's Dumbo on this small little platform, and the child has to occupy that platform because he'll sort of fall to his death if he doesn't stay on that platform. It's a big old elephant having to squunch himself onto this little platform. And I think once the sort of threat of the narcissistic parent is in the distance enough, this notion of writing a prescription for self-care, I think the goal of it is that it lets Dumbo, in this case, it sort of you could imagine it, suddenly the scene shifts, and now Dumbo's on that platform, but he's back on the earth. There's plenty of ground all around him, and if he steps off the platform, he's not going to plunge to his demise. He's just going to walk. He's going to be able to walk around. It's now safe to leave that platform. But you can think of these acts of self-care as things that are needed to be done to kind of convince oneself, maybe the self-system, that it's worth risking that step off the platform, because it may in fact now be safe to do so. But I think that's very much a discovery. It's a discovery based in one's experience and sort of one's lived experience. And thinking about what prescriptions would be meaningful in this way for self-care, and following through on them, can offer the kind of lived experience that is so essential to finding out one can leave the platform of worthlessness that used to be mandated by the narcissist. Well, I hoped today's video was of some help, and I look forward to posting next week. Thank you everyone for your continued engagement with the channel. And again, next week's video will be posted 9 a.m. Pacific time on Sunday. Take good care.